There are a ton of things that I wish I knew when I first started lifting weights. The biggest thing I can recommend is to keep an open mind to this. The more lifters that you talk to that have experience and are asked this question, all sing a very similar tune. So I encourage you, even though it's usually not the sexy answer or the answer you want to hear, to listen to it with an open mind and strongly take these things into consideration. We have all been through experiences, whether it's in the gym or outside of the gym, that we wish we could go back in time and tell our younger selves how to behave or how to react when this situation comes around. The problem is, our younger self probably wouldn't listen to our older self. Another surprising thing is that most people kind of know the answer to this question, it's just not one that they want to hear. Because this question is answered often, and really the people that listen to the answer and do things consistently and do the proper things over time are the ones that are going to benefit the most. For major changes, 5 major things that I could tell myself when I was younger, in order they would be: emphasize technique over weight, be patient, listen, save the ego, find a good role model. The first, on emphasizing technique over weight. Most of us, including myself that grew up in the United States, may have learned how to lift weights in the high school weight room, whether it's for the football team or the PE class. And bless their hearts, most of these teachers don't really have an expertise in training young people, showing young people how to lift weights with proper technique, especially things like the squat and the deadlift and the power clean. And everybody always hears people preach about technique over weight, but it is easier said than done. There really is never a good reason to increase the weight if the technique is poor. It's especially tough for athletes, whether they're training with their buddies in the gym, training with a team, to actually follow this advice and swallow the ego, because you know you're going to have to take a step back in the weight when all of your buddies may be pushing the weight even with sloppy technique. It is a very natural feeling to want to sacrifice that technique so that you can lift more weight. But in the big picture, proper technique is going to carry you much further over time than doing heavy weight with poor technique. It's easier said than done. I'll relate it to the hot girl in high school. How many of you remember the hottest girl in high school when you were there, and now 10 years afterwards, she is for sure not the hottest girl? Lifting technique is going to be the same thing. If you focus on proper technique over weight, in the long term, it's going to be what you want in the end. I promise you that. Another reason to focus on technique, the strongest person with the sloppiest form is going to have a higher chance of getting injured than the person that's being more conservative on the weight selection, but using better technique. And once those injuries start to stack up over time, the person that maybe was behind in weight and using proper technique is now going to surpass the person who's hurt all the time. One thing I can tell you without a doubt is that gradual, consistent, hard work is going to progress you in the best way possible, without a doubt. Number 2, be patient. Remember that strength sports, they're a marathon, not a sprint. The guy that's going to end up on top of the world 10 years from now, he's going to be the guy that's worried about his next 10 pounds, Whether it takes a few months to get, it's not going to be the guy that's doing crazy, dumb things to get the 50 pounds next week. The guy 10 years from now that's going to be on top of the world, he's worrying about each small step in front of the other. He's not trying to take leaps and bounds. And depending on where you lift, with the exception of drugs, there are no such thing as shortcuts. There's no magic technique. There's no magic exercise program. There's nothing magic that's going to get you to where you want sooner than consistent hard work. Powerlifting is a very unique sport where most of the athletes have access to some of the best athletes in the world, which is great. One of the problems that can cause is novice athletes start to follow what the best powerlifters in the world are doing right now and not what got them there. And most likely, these athletes were doing something different to get them there than what they're currently doing. They've been through injuries, they've learned through struggles and training, they've found out what works for them. And again, what got them there is going to be different than what they're currently doing now. And what you see with athletes at the top, it's only a snapshot of their current success. What you don't see in that snapshot is what they went through, the injuries, the struggles, the heartbreaks, the missed lifts, the crappy coaches, the family and friends trying to get them to not train so much because they want more of their attention. That's what you don't see. You only see the snapshot of that athlete at the top right now. Another part of being patient is understanding what a plateau really is. I see athletes all the time talking about, I've been on this program for 6 or 8 weeks and I haven't hit any new PRs, or I tried to do 5 pounds more and I missed it. Let me tell you that that is not what a plateau is. Yes, the more novice you are, the sooner you can expect yourself to see progress, and the more advanced you get, the harder those gains are going to come. but there are world-class athletes in there that have world records that have been plateaued for a year or more. So understand what a plateau is, and just because you're not seeing crazy gains in PRs over a 6 or 8 week block does not mean the training is working. Stick to it, be consistent, and work hard. Remember that Rome wasn't built in a day, so switching programs isn't going to do anything beneficial for you, especially if that program is good. Rome wasn't built in a day, it was built brick by brick. How do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. How do you get that 100-pound PR? By getting a 5-pound PR every time. A lot of this is easier said than done, because in today's world of social media, you see all of these lifters that either come out every month or every week that seem like they came out of nowhere, and they're lifting near world-class numbers. You have to understand that those things are a flash in the pan, and not everybody can be that way. And if you want to be a national or state level competitor, you probably know by now or not whether you're going to be that flash in the pan. And if you're not, the only way to get there is those consistent brick by brick ways about how Rome wasn't built in a day. You got to get there with a small, consistent, hard work. The true recipe for success in the strength game, there's 5 simple things. Get plenty of sleep, eat well, train with great technique, have your programming on point, and be consistent. The third part of these major changes that I would do if I could go over and start over again would be to listen. Some of the best advice can come from the people that aren't as strong as you. Especially as you start to get stronger and you've been in this game for a long time, you start to get surrounded by confirmation bias. You think you know why things work, and then you start to only focus on the data that supports why you think things work. There could be an athlete out there that has only been training half as long as you, and he's half as strong as you. But he or she may have been through something that you're going through, whether it's a technique adjustment, how to lock out a bench, how to lock out a deadlift, how to come out of the bottom on a squat. The same thing you're struggling with, they have maybe figured out and solved, but you don't want to listen to that because you've been around longer or you're stronger than them. So listen to everybody and take those pieces of advice that you hear and start to develop and build your own theory. It doesn't hurt to listen, it only hurts to not listen. One of the things I've really tried to pride myself on in my career is I've tried to take advice and listen to everybody that I could, and that doesn't mean I used any of that advice. I may have used very little of it, but from all these people with different experiences than me, I took out and picked little different things, whether it's training or technique, and used that to develop my own system and build my own self. The fourth of the major changes I would do if I could go back in time would be to save the ego. And really, this relates to all of the other changes above. What this can mean is that you need to carefully choose your exercises. A lot of people choose exercises because it's something they can move more weight in, and it helps pad the ego. Now, that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes a little ego boost gives it a little confidence boost, which will lead to strength improvement. But you can't consistently only choose the exercises that are easier for you to do, or you're good at, or you can throw around more weight than you used to. You need to find a good balance of what I call ego boosting and ego deflating lifts. It is good to do some things that are a shortened range of motion and allows you to lift more weight than you ever could in that lift, but you need to balance that with extended range of motion lifts and lifts that are harder and you suck at, because finding that balance of strengthening your weak points and encouraging progress in your strong points is the right blend to get you stronger. I also think that there can be a direct correlation between an uncontained ego and injuries. So if you don't know when to dial it back, and you don't admit or address when you know you're doing a lift just for the confidence boost, and those are the things that you live within and you're always doing, I can promise you that will lead to more injuries. The fifth and final of the major changes I would do if I could go back in time would be to find a good role model. A good role model is going to be someone that has had a long, strong, successful career, not someone that's been around for 1 or 2 years and set a few world records and disappeared. You want to find the lifters that had to work their way to get there, not the natural genetic freaks that have always been on top, because the people that have had to swim and struggle and figure out how to keep their head above water and keep grinding day in, day out to get there and do it for the most part healthily and do it the right way are the ones that are going to be the best advice. You also want to find someone that exemplifies the traits in yourself. So if you consider yourself a smart IQ person and you're very mental with how you like to think about training, don't find someone that's just a genetic freak and they don't know why they're strong, they just know that they are strong. Also someone that's well-rounded. They need to understand proper technique. They need to understand proper training programs and make sure that they value rest, recovery, and nutrition, and really the whole package. For me, the 2 people that I have admired the most would be Brad Gillingham who has pulled over 800 pounds more than 100 times in competition, more than anyone else in history, and Mike Teixeira because of how he mentally approaches training and understands it. So I encourage you to find people like that, maybe reach out to them, and it will only help develop you as a lifter. So hopefully we can all do what our younger selves wouldn't do and take those 5 pieces of advice and figure out some way to apply them to our daily lives now. It's only going to make us a better, stronger athlete in the end, even if it means trying to suck up the ego sometimes.